Hello there, my name is Robert Russell and I am an Associate Learning Developer at London South Bank University, specifically at the Centre for Research Informed Teaching, otherwise known as CRIT. But I'm also a mathematics lecturer with a fair amount of online teaching experience, and given the current climate, I thought it would be a good idea to share some of my thoughts and opinions on how best to set yourself up online as a mathematics lecturer. If you are a mathematics lecturer or a physics lecturer, anyone who has to use mathematical notation in your lectures, you will know by now that the systems that are given to us are not really designed with our teaching styles in mind. They'll concentrate on PowerPoint presentations and breakout groups and quizzes, but won't give us a tool to actually simulate writing on a whiteboard or a blackboard like many of us do in our classes. So in this video, I'm going to give you some options for the best ways I think there are to overcome this deficiency in the technology that we have. And these options will vary depending on your technical ability and also whether or not you happen to own one of these magical devices with a pen, which obviously makes life a little bit easier. Two things before we begin. This video is mainly going to be about mathematical lecturing where you need to write mathematics live in front of your class. If you're from a different discipline, you might not find that useful for you, but you still might find it interesting. Secondly, these techniques are my thoughts only. This is what I have found works for me and has worked for me over the years. You might have a very different teaching style, so you might want to use different methods altogether. And almost certainly in the future, there will be a different system than any of the possibilities that I offer at the moment. Firstly, what are the basic requirements for actually delivering an online lecture? I think there are 4 things you need. Firstly, you need some kind of device that has a connection with the internet. Secondly, you need some online conferencing software. Thirdly, you need a microphone. And fourthly, you need a video. Now let's talk about all of these individually. For the computer, you could use either a desktop or a laptop or a tablet. It doesn't really matter. My advice would be to use a device that you are already very comfortable with and you know how it works. Also, when you connect it with the internet, I recommend connecting it with an Ethernet cable rather than Wi-Fi because that will always be more reliable. Next, you'll need some online conferencing software, something that allows you to broadcast yourself to many other users. I've used quite a few pieces of software in my time, including Skype, Google Hangouts, EasyTalks, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and Panopto Webcasting. At London South Bank University, we are being encouraged to use Panopto for pre-recorded sessions and Microsoft Teams for live interactive classes. For the remainder of this video, I'm going to be using Panopto, but everything I speak about is equally applicable to all of the other software that I mentioned and any others that are out there. Next, we need to talk about the microphone. Students need to be able to hear you and to be able to hear you clearly. And the number one complaint for poor online videos is actually the audio quality, not the video quality. And this is often due to bad use of microphones. Most people will use a microphone inbuilt into their webcam or into their tablet or laptop. Now this is completely fine, but the main problem you will find is these microphones will pick up lots of other noises inside of the house. Especially if you're inside a large room like this one, because they'll pick up the noise of all of the echo in the room, especially if you're a long way away from the microphone. These microphones can also pick up lots of other noises, such as the typing of your fingers on the keyboard, the scratching of a pen on your tablet, the buzzing of a phone on the table,
and what is disruptive?
Your knee or elbow bumping the table, other people walking around and talking in the house,
about the processes of
cars passing by outside,
a different location in the house.
And this can all make it very difficult for students to concentrate when they're trying to listen to what you say. If this kind of microphone is your only option, my advice is to
find the quietest room in your house and if possible the most contained room in your house. And this will minimize the chances of any of those outside noises disrupting your lecture.
The next best option, if you have it, is some kind of headset with an attached microphone that goes right up against your mouth. I don't have one at home to show you, but the good thing about these is those microphones are unidirectional. They're only supposed to pick up the sound that's right in front of them, the sound of your mouth, and so that will eliminate a lot of the other sounds around the house that will be distracting. Also, the headphones themselves will prevent your computer or laptop or tablet making any sounds, so it makes for a much better experience for the students. The best option is to get one of these things, a studio quality condenser condenser microphone, which I happen to have because I'm also a musician. You can get cheap versions of these for about £30, but they'll do a fantastic job. If you want to buy one of these microphones, make sure to find one with a USB connection. This means you can connect it directly with your computer and won't need any additional machinery. So if you can get hold of one of these, I would definitely recommend it. It will give the best audio experience for your students. Let's talk about cameras now. Some lecturers don't like using cameras in online lectures, but personally I think it's a very important part of the online experience for students to be able to see your face and to see you explaining things. Just like microphones, there are different options for cameras. You could use the camera inbuilt into your tablet or webcam, but this can often give an unflattering angle of your face. I think it's better to try and get access to a webcam itself, a dedicated webcam that you can mount at eye level so that you can look into it as if you were looking at someone in real life. It's better if you can find a room with natural light, and if possible try and get the window behind your webcam, otherwise your face might turn up as a shadow for the students. The other thing to say about webcams is it's a good idea to try and look as close as possible to it while you're teaching. And one neat trick that I've found is to arrange the items on my computer screen to be as close as possible to the webcam itself, so that when I do have to look away from the camera, it doesn't look like I'm looking too far away from the student's perspective. Okay, now that we have the basics for teaching an online lecture, let's speak specifically about the options I think you have when it comes to actually delivering mathematical content. Option 1, lecture like the other disciplines. Put simply, get used to using PowerPoint. It's quite feasible to imitate your writing on a whiteboard by inserting scans or photographs of your mathematics in a slide presentation, and if you want, applying animations to each of the elements that you can control during your lesson. Yes, it can be slow and a little clunky, but there's no reason why you can't be creative and make it work for you. If you're familiar with it, you could also use PowerPoint's equation editor, which I'll speak more about later. Here is an example of me putting together an animated slide with equation editor and a diagram, and this took me a little over 10 minutes. And here is an example of how it would look to deliver this slide in an online lecture. What we have to do first is find the f' function, and the f' function gives you an equation for the slope of that original function at any point, and only after we've done that can we plug in the value of 2, and that can get us the slope of the function at that point. Very important that you get that order correct. The main advantage to this approach is that you are using software that the technology we've been given is built for, something like a PowerPoint presentation. So you're very unlikely to run into any technical difficulties when you're giving this kind of presentation. But there are quite a few disadvantages, in my opinion. The main one is the time it takes to prepare materials of this nature. Secondly, it's very difficult with this kind of lecture to fix any mistakes or to make any adjustments on the fly during the lecture, which I quite like to do. And the third thing I'd say is, I suspect a lot of students don't like this lecturing style when it comes to mathematics. They want to be able to write things down in the classroom. And it's very difficult in an online environment to get a sense of when it's time to move on, when you can move on to the next line or the next slide. So I think students can find that lecturing style quite frustrating. Option 2, learn to type mathematically. It's not unfeasible to type mathematics live while you are giving a lecture. Microsoft Word, for example, has a rather good equation editor, which is based mainly on LaTeX commands. You can get almost anything you need and then application share or desktop share the Word document with your students. If you're not familiar with Word's equation editor, you can most quickly insert an equation by typing Alt and equals. There are 2 types of equations: inline equations, which appear alongside regular text, and display equations, which appear on their own. You must start these on a new line, and I would recommend becoming familiar with the process of aligning your equal signs. You can do this by right-clicking on an equal sign, inserting a manual break, and then pressing Tab until it is aligned. You can also make use of Edit Copy, Edit Paste, which is actually quite satisfying as it simulates the familiar mathematical process of copying the line from above and adjusting the element you're working on. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to have to let u equal x squared. Well, that's pretty easy to differentiate. That means that, if I could spell, that means that u dash is going to be 2x, isn't it? The derivative of x squared. And what about v? V is going to be the second function, isn't it? This one right here. In fact, I'm going to copy that and paste that right here. V is going to be that function. So v dash is, well, that's a little bit harder to calculate, to find the derivative of this function here, because we need to actually use the chain rule here, don't we? It's not a simple function. So let's just work out v dash on its own. The main advantage of this approach is it's dynamic. You can change the content on the fly, just like you might do in a regular interactive lecturing environment. You're also not restricted to equation editor. You could just as easily insert pictures and diagrams, helping you to create a little work of art in real time. You can also export the entire document as a PDF file at the end of the lecture and upload it for your students. Now, this approach is not just useful for online lectures. On quite a few occasions in the past for me personally, I found myself put into a room with no whiteboard or a minimal whiteboard that's unsuitable for maths, with no document camera, nothing I can actually write on. The only thing I've been given to teach is a computer with a projector at the front. And this has been a lifesaver, to be able to pull up Microsoft Word and to type my lecture as I go. So it's just a useful skill to have anyway, in my opinion. The disadvantage to this approach, I think, is it does look a little bit unprofessional to be typing in front of the students. And if Microsoft Word or your word processor is giving you problems, it can be a little bit frustrating to deal with it in a live environment. Also, the noise of the typing, which you'll be doing a lot of, will be a little bit distracting for the students, regardless of which kind of microphone you have. Option 3. Use a tablet and desktop share. This is my preferred option. I share my desktop with the entire class and I teach using this mantra. If I can see it on my screen, then the students can see it on their screens. This approach suddenly opens up the possibility for my lecture to be much more professional, as I can bring different components onto the screen. But the main component that I want on the screen is this. I want my writing on my tablet to appear in front of the students. Now, I don't like using my tablet to actually host the lecture because of the unflattering camera angle, but also because it'll pick up the noises of your writing on the tablet itself. I want to use my computer to actually host the lecture. So how can I get the writing on my tablet to appear on my computer? Well, there are two possibilities. Possibility 1 is to use an online whiteboard like Liveboard, which I'm using here, or BitPaper will also work. The idea is you simply create a board from your computer, then you send the link to yourself, open it on your tablet, and then you have two devices logged in able to contribute to the interactive whiteboard. I then share the view of the whiteboard on my computer with my students, and I effectively can now write on my tablet and my students can see what I am writing. You want to differentiate this term over here. And we use the chain rule for that, don't we? We take that power, we bring it down the front, which will be a half down here. We leave the inside exactly the same. We take 1 off the power, so 1 from a half is negative a half. And then finally we multiply by the derivative of the inside function, of the something, as I've been calling it before. Now, you can also send the link to other students, but I would recommend against this because all you need is for one rogue student to want to disrupt your lecture and suddenly they can delete everything. So I would advise against that. Possibility 2 is to use a second piece of online conferencing software. So here I'm using Google Hangouts. I've logged into Google Hangouts on my computer. I've also logged into Google Hangouts using a family member's account on my tablet, and we are having a video conference call at the same time. We mute the microphones and we mute the cameras, and my tablet's account shares its desktop with me on my computer account. This gives me essentially a live stream of my tablet's desktop that I can move around on my computer and share with my students. So on my tablet, I would open my favorite drawing tool. In this case, I'm using OneNote, and I could draw my mathematics that way. So that's it. That is precisely the exact slope. Now, if you plug that in on your calculator, you'll find that you get approximately 4.24. And so that is the equation of, no, that's the slope of the tangent line at that point. Let me pull up the GeoGebra file again. There it is. So if you find the slope if you constructed a tangent line at that point, we would get exactly a slope of 4.24. And that is how you use differentiation to find the slope of any line at any point. Either way, the goal is to completely free yourself up, so whatever you're writing on your tablet, you can then bring onto your screen. You can also rearrange your desktop on the main screen to include other elements like a chat window or maybe some graphing software or some PowerPoint slides. It doesn't really matter. But this, I think, is the best way to actually get your writing to the students with the minimal fuss. The other advantage with the desktop share scheme is you could also record your lecture. You could record your desktop using some third-party software like OBS or using Panopto as well. And you know that you are recording exactly what the students are going to be able to see. Now, this solution is a little bit complicated, I grant you that. But for me, with the current technology, this is the best setup for teaching mathematics to students online. And the students I've been using this with have given me some fantastic feedback. So hopefully you have found that really useful. Please take what I've suggested, mold it to suit your own teaching style, do some practice runs so you can make sure everything is working as you expect, and have fun. Good luck. I'll see you around.